We are a captured race. Know it or not, we are all slaves, and have been for hundreds of years. We were born into slavery, live as slaves and die as slaves, and the saddest part of this is that most of us will live our entire lives having no idea of this fact. But a fact is a fact. We are slaves and slaves have masters and controllers. They control us through fear, money, force, but most importantly they use our own minds against us. They manipulate our thoughts, the way we think, and therefore the way we act. Our lives are made up of a series of reactions to preconceived thoughts within our minds. These thoughts have been taught to us by those whom have gained control of this world through deception, propaganda, and psychology. Three main areas of control are education, money, and media. It is decided what we are taught throughout our education, what we are taught and what we are not taught, what is shown to us and what is not shown to us. It is from these teachings that we build a base of reality within our minds, a vision of the world around us, how we act within it, and react to it, control what we are allowed to know and what we are not, and that controls our thoughts and what we accept within our lives. The world is not what you have been told it is. This world's true ancient history has not been shown to us in its true form. Do you know the true origins of religion? Have you ever asked where religion came from? What thoughts or events did our ancient ancestors have that led to us to today's religions? The origins of the human race is vast, but you have not been told about it. Why do I mention religion? Because religion forms the basis of all life and society as we know it today. Our governments, our laws, courts, police enforcement of those laws, our moral beliefs and actions, our readiness to submit to control of governments, to pay taxes, to have rulers, authorities over us. We submit to this just as a slave submits to the whip, but most of us do so willingly in blissful ignorance. Just stop and think of those few instances mentioned above and how just those few things control your actions and thoughts in life. Why do you kneel before these kings? Note, research the divine right of kings. Quote, Wikipedia. The divine right of kings or divine right is a political and doctrine of royal and political legitimacy. It asserts that a monarch is subject to no earthly authority, deriving the right to rule directly from the will of God. The king is thus not subject to the will of his people, the aristocracy, or any other estate of the realm. Governments, kings or queens, stem from the divine right of kings. Our government is that of the British Queen. She is our ruler. Our government answers to her, not us. The king or queen is thus not subject to the will of his or her people. Now tell me again about how you believe that this is your government. The government is the administrator of the king's slaves, and the courts and laws are the controllers of them. Here is the way it goes. In the 1600s, wealthy landowners proclaimed that God spoke to them and decreed that they had the right to absolute rule, with the blessings of the church. For a cut of the profit, of course. Quote Wikipedia. The state of monarchy is the supremest thing upon earth, for kings are not only God's lieutenants upon earth and sit upon God's throne, but even by God himself they are called gods. So these landlords proclaimed their superiority above that of common man and maintained that superiority through force. This is where armies come from and the need to have them. You to this day submit to the self-proclaimed divine right of kings and allow these deceivers to rule your lives, and you do so ignorantly. Think about this next time you write that tax check. Did you know that the entire Western world's media is controlled by only 6 people? TV, radio, print media. These 6 people literally control what you are allowed to know and what you are not allowed to know, and this is done so to project and reinforce a certain perception of reality to you. This perception of reality guides and steers you in a certain direction, their direction. Media is a system of control. Mind control, in the pursuit of social engineering. Did you know that most of the world's news only comes from 3 world resources, Reuters being but one, and that our news is selected from the stories put out by these 3 companies, then recited to the masses via the media? These 3 sources of news create your understanding of the reality of world events, and depending on the desired effect that these groups want you to think. It is mass social engineering, and you read the newspapers, watch the TV news and listen to the radio, and these stories form your opinion of world events. You are being mind-controlled. You are being steered like a captain steers a ship or as a shepherd steers his flock, and in your ignorant compliance you follow your leaders in thought and actions. You are their slaves. Money. Money is the carrot that slave masters dangle in front of their minions' noses, and closes the loop of control. Money is a fraud, always has been, always will be. Money is created out of nothing. Like a magician's trick, money is manifested out of thin air for the amusement of the masses. All money is a debt owed back to its creator. It is created out of nothing, loaned to you, then has to be repaid back to the creator plus interest. The same people whom deemed themselves kings and queens also decided that they also have the power to create money out of thin air and proclaimed this as their divine right of God to do so. They outsourced this deed to others, but by their law and intent they made it be. There is not one single aspect of your life that is not ruled by money, and therefore not one single aspect of your life that is not ruled by them. Why do you work? Why do you have to borrow money to build a home? Do you know what money is? In the 1920s, the world's money manipulators took us off the gold standard, meaning that they made money valueless and not backed by gold. Quote, money is fiat money, which does away with the need to represent a physical commodity and takes on its worth the same way gold did, by means of people's perception and faith. Let's look at that quote. 1. Which does away with the need to represent a physical commodity and takes on its worth the same way gold did, i.e. it has no physical value in itself, as gold did. 2. By means of people's perception and faith, all money is nothing more than a perception, and that you have faith in it that it has value. Today's fiat currency and banking system has no value attached to it, it is purely based upon your belief that it has value. When you go to a bank and ask for a loan, the bank gets you to sign a loan agreement contract. This contract is a promise to pay, it is a fancy IOU. The bank has no money to give you. When you sign the IOU, you bring into existence the money yourself, as a promise to pay. The bank claims the money you just manifested, then loans it back to you. Congratulations, you have just been swindled and conned, defrauded and deceived. Now go to work, earn some money and give it all to the bank to repay a loan of money that you, yourself, actually created, and plus interest. Also note that every time you use a credit card, you are also creating the money that the banks now claim that you owe them. They have given you nothing, they have created nothing, but they say you owe them plus interest. This money is almost 100% profit to the banks and is a 100% debit for you. This fraud and money controls your entire life. Have you ever wondered how by coincidence that your home loan coincides with the period of your entire productive working life? You spend your life repaying a fraudulent loan to gangsters called banks. Have you ever worked out how much of your earned wages goes straight back to the banks and government? Let's do some quick sums. You have a bank home loan which takes 40% of your wages, you pay 30% income tax to the government, you pay 10% GST on the things you purchase, plus you pay other hidden taxes such as council rates, vehicle license fees, etc. Let's say this adds up to another 10% tax. Now let's do the maths. 40 plus 30 plus 10 plus 10 equals 90%. Yep, hello, you have given 90% of your efforts and money to a fraudulent bank and your masters. Time to wake up. You are a slave. You, being the average tax-paying person with a home loan, pays up to 90% of your earnings to the banks and government. The money you spend on yourself to buy things like food, clothes is around 10% of your earnings. So who are you working for? You are a slave. Wake up. So what can we do to free ourselves from this ridiculous situation and free our minds, bodies, and spirit from these self-proclaimed rulers of mankind? The basis of our liberty is already written in documents such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, to name a few. Now, although there are a few things that must be changed to truly free ourselves from their rule, but these documents outline those things that all humans should adhere to in an endeavor to live a natural life outside of slavery. A summary of the Declaration of Human Rights. Article 1. Right to equality. Article 2. Freedom from discrimination. Article 3. Right to life, liberty, personal security. Article 4. Freedom from slavery. Article 5. Freedom from torture and degrading treatment. Article 6. Right to recognition as a person before the law. Article 7. Right to equality before the law. Article 8. Right to remedy by competent tribunal. Article 9. Freedom from arbitrary arrest and exile. Article 10. Right to fair public hearing. Article 11. Right to be considered innocent until proven guilty. Article 12. Freedom from interference with privacy, family, home and correspondence. Article 13. Right to free movement in and out of the country. Article 14. Right to asylum in other countries from persecution. Article 15. Right to a nationality and the freedom to change it. Article 16. Right to marriage and family. Article 17. Right to own property. Article 18. Freedom of belief and religion. Article 19. Freedom of opinion and information. Article 20. Right of peaceful assembly and association. Article 21. Right to participate in government and in free elections. Article 22. Right to social security. Article 23. Right to desirable work and to join trade unions. Article 24. Right to rest and leisure. Article 25. Right to adequate living standard. Article 26. Right to education. Article 27. Right to participate in the cultural life of community. Article 28. Right to a social order that articulates this document. Article 29. Community duties essential to free and full development. Article 30. Freedom from state or personal interference in the above rights. Article 4 states, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude, slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. We are in a state of slavery now. And as such we shall free ourselves for slavery by not allowing those to rule over us. We are all independent beings born into this realm free and with unalienable rights to freedom and liberty and not to be ruled by others such as we are being. I also draw attention to Article 25. 1. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. This also leads into the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Right to an adequate standard of living. Relating to right to food, right to water, right to housing and right to clothing. Article 11 recognizes the right of everyone to an adequate standard of living. This includes, but is not limited to, the right to adequate food, clothing, housing, and the continuous improvement of living conditions. It also creates an obligation on parties to work together to eliminate world hunger. The right to adequate food, also referred to as the right to food, is interpreted as requiring the availability of food in a quantity and quality sufficient to satisfy the dietary needs of individuals, free from adverse substances, and acceptable within a given culture. This must be accessible to all. This must also ensure an equitable distribution of world food supplies in relation to need. The right to adequate food also implies a right to water. The right to adequate housing, also referred to as the right to housing, is the right to live somewhere in security, peace, and dignity. It requires adequate privacy, adequate space, adequate security, adequate lighting and ventilation, adequate basic infrastructure and adequate location with regard to work and basic facilities, all at a reasonable cost. Parties must ensure security of tenure and that access is free of discrimination, and progressively work to eliminate homelessness, forced evictions, defined as the permanent or temporary removal against their will of individuals, families, and/or communities from the homes and/or land which they occupy, without the provision of, and access to, appropriate forms of legal or other protection, are a prima facie violation of the covenant. The right to adequate clothing. Now people associate these documents with the United Nations, but I urge caution, for the United Nations is also not what you think. The United Nations goal is to be, no, let me rephrase that, the United Nations is the one world government. The United Nations was created to consolidate all governments and lands of this earth and control them under one banner, under their rule. It is not to free the people of this earth but to control them from one source, and I regret to inform you that this has essentially been achieved. My solution. Firstly, let me say that I am not a socialist or communist, nor do I engage their principles. I am for liberty and freedom and the promotion of individuality. I support the adoption of the values stated above with a few modifications. Governments, whomever and wherever they are to revert to simple administrators of the affairs of the people, i.e. roads, sewage, water supply, etc. All laws are to be based on common and natural law and not to be used to rule over people or against the will of the people. At the time of the birth of all human beings they shall be issued credit as part of their inalienable rights, that will allow them to live their lives to the fullest, with dignity and purpose, and not as debt slaves. This credit shall be repaid to humanity by work done to help and improve the human race over the person's lifetime. Basically, you are endowed with an IOU at the time of your birth and you repay that IOU to humanity over your lifetime, no interest payable ever. This credit will pay for all basic needs, a home, food, clothing, education, medical, etc. You will never want of any of the fundamental needs of life. These needs will be considered an inalienable right of life. You will not be a debt slave to some self-appointed divine ruler of human beings, nor will you suffer to work to repay fraudulent debt. You could have the best education available regardless of financial status. All knowledge will be available to you, not just selected portions designed to prop up a social illusions. There would not be a single human being homeless, as every person on this earth would be able to afford a home. There would be food for all, true medicines, not corporate profit pills. All knowledge will be available to all, in the sense that individual companies or governments cannot hide or hoard discoveries from the human race, such as free energy machines, medical discoveries, etc. All ideas would be made publicly available in an open source way, so that instead of just a few people working on free energy, the whole world could come together and work on the common problem to find the answer for the benefit of all and not just for profit. Imagine a world where there would be no need for theft, no homes broken into, no cars stolen, no personal items stolen from you. Almost all theft is due to economic reasons. If those economic reasons do not exist, then the need to steal does not exist. Therefore crime rates go down, the cost associated with crime and the social effect of crime in society also improves. Imagine a world where medicine was based on curing people, not based on treating them. Treatments are for profit. Cures are for life. A world where natural or herbal remedies were part of our medical system, a medical system not controlled by corporations whose only objective is profit, but based on the desire to cure regardless of cost. A world where human suffering was not a profit center for big business. Imagine a world where mankind's ability to explore space was not limited by the cost of doing so. The same goes for methods of travel on this earth, high-speed trains linking cities, etc. Governments, kings, queens, and money have been holding back the human race since the 16th century. It is time to evolve and ascend above this restrictive form of controlled slavery and free humanity. By Martin.